ever done an ERMI home mold test, gotten your results back, and wondered immediately, what the heck does this all mean? Or have you done an ERMI before and had someone else analyze it, but you don't quite trust their analysis and you want to be able to understand it yourself? If you said yes to either of these questions, this episode is for you. In today's episode, I'm teaching you how to interpret my favorite home mold test that to start with on your mold journey, an ERMI test by Envirobiomics. And I'm going to teach you how to interpret it in 5 minutes or less so that you know what your next step should be based on your specific ERMI results. Today, I'm going to be breaking down why I think the ERMI test is the best home mold kit to buy and start with, what each major section of the ERMI means, how to understand your ERMI results in 5 minutes or less, better than your doctor or mold inspector, and what your next step should be based on your ERMI analysis. If you're ready to simplify your mold healing journey and clarify the exact next steps you need to take without wasting money, then this episode is for you. And if you want more mold answers after this episode, be sure to go to betterbellytherapies.com/mold to catch up with our previous mold episodes. And be sure to subscribe to this podcast so you get every upcoming episode in our current mold series. We're running through to September, and I believe it's now pouring into October. So be sure to go subscribe to your podcast host or go to betterbellytherapies.com/subscribe to get our weekly email reminders. Let's jump in. Hey friend, welcome to the Better Belly podcast. If you're currently trying endless supplements, doctor visits, and diet changes to heal your mystery symptoms, you are in the right place. We're here to solve the real root causes behind your gut, hormones, skin, sleep, and brain concerns. Literally anything and everything in your body. My name is Allison Jordan. I'm a functional medicine practitioner that has supported over 150 clients just like you to heal problems that no one has been able to fix. You don't need a perfect diet or a random supplement you found on Instagram to heal. You need a proven system that heals your whole body from the inside out. That's what I'm here to share with you, episode by episode. It's time to make health easy again. And just as a reminder, this information is not meant to diagnose, manage, or treat disease. Always consult with your own health practitioner before you make any changes to your health. All right, guys, I'm very excited for today. We are recording video and I'm at my computer because I am going to actually be pulling up ERMI examples. If you're a visual learner, if you want to be part of this, we're going to be uploading this podcast episode as a video option as well. So be sure you can open in Apple Podcast or Spotify. You can switch over to a video option and see these results. We will, now that I say it, we also have not put video into our website browser, but we do upload all of our podcast audio. And I'm going to see if my team can get video on here as well, so you guys can watch it straight from our website, betterbellytherapies.com. Just go to betterbellytherapies.com/328, which is today's episode number, and it'll pull it right up. So adding a note right now, video for 328. All right. We're going to be doing that. If you don't have video access or you're listening in the car, keep listening. It's going to be a great primer. You really can interpret an ERMI in 5 minutes or less in a way that actually gives you an idea of what to do next. That's the main goal. And additionally, what to do next without basically interpreting it improperly, which is what is unfortunately happening to many of my clients. And it's creating a lot of delay in them healing their body. All right. So first off, what is an ERMI test? If you're kind of new to it and you're like, well, what is this test you recommend? An ERMI test is a dust-based test for mold where you take a Swiffer piece of fabric and you collect dust in places where you typically aren't going to, it's going to have old layers of dust. So the tops of ceiling fans, the tops of bookshelves, the tops of picture frames and mirrors and places that collect dust, not because we're dirty human beings, but just we don't tend to clean up there. So it's not going to be your kitchen counter. Hopefully you're cleaning that more regularly. You collect dust here and then you send it into Envirobiomics and they test what's in that dust. Not everything in dust is mold, but if mold's in there, it's able to test what types of mold are in there and how much. Is it a very, very high count for the amount of dust in there? Is it a low count? What's going on? What types of mold? And this is a great place to start when you were just trying to answer the question, is there mold in this living space? Typically, you're going to do an ERMI. What I recommend to my clients to do an ERMI for your whole living space, except for your basement, unless you live in your basement or somebody in your family lives in the basement, because basements do typically and often have a different kind of biology to them. And while especially if you have an HVAC that's in the basement air quality can affect the whole house. For the sake of not throwing off your meters, especially if most of your living experience is on the first floor and higher, you really typically only want to do first and second, whatever floors you have that are above ground. But it's when you collect that, it's answering, is there mold? Is there an issue, like an issue level of mold? Because mold is everywhere. You're not going to run into a house that doesn't have any mold. When we look at the ERMI, you're actually going to see that some of the molds that they find, they actually have split into water damage specific molds, meaning molds that only show up when there's been an improper management of water. It could be humidity, it could be a flood, it could be a minor leak from a tube or a drain, but if there's some type of water damage, and then they have a section that says common indoor molds. So there's an acknowledgement that mold will happen. It's not like it expects it to have no mold. It wants to have within a normal range. And this step in the process of trying to heal yourself from mold and identify if you're sick from mold, it's part 2 or step 2 of the 3-step mold treatment plan that I outlined in episode 223. I will link that in our show notes. But step 1, typically I recommend clients to test yourself for mold. And we just released an episode on this, episode 326, the Mold Test Kit 101, how to test your home and your body. That's going to be a great one to go back to if you're not familiar with the testing to do for your body. But I like to start there unless you literally can see mold on your, whatever living space you're in. A lot of people are living in spaces where you can't see mold. And I really highly recommend testing yourself first because the data is so valuable. You get a variety of senses of things like, do you have historical exposure to mold? Because what you want to know first is it in your body? And then you look at your present dwelling space with an ERMI. So step 1 is testing yourself. Step 2 is testing your home. And there's 2 parts to step 2. You test your home with an ERMI to answer, is there mold? And then the second step, if the ERMI is positive, the second step for your home specifically is to get a certified mold inspector. We're not going to cover that in this episode, but I do talk about it in the 3-step mold treatment plan episode on what to look for to get a qualified quality mold inspector, because unfortunately there are so many. It's a very poorly regulated job. It's a very poorly regulated industry. And so there's a lot of mold inspectors who will not find mold that is there. But if your ERMI says it's there, you know it's there. And so you find a qualified mold inspector using advice I give on episode 223. And that's where the answer, where is the mold? So again, the ERMI is not going to tell you where it is. It can't tell you, is it in your shower? Is it under your kitchen sink? Is it in the roof? It can't tell you any of that, but it can say, generally in this living space, are we picking up on mold? And that is that's the test I'm going to teach you how to interpret in 5 minutes or less today. And if anyone's curious, step 3 of the 3-step mold treatment plan is once you have gotten rid of the mold, you've answered, is there mold? Where's the mold? You got rid of it. Then step 3 is healing from the mold. And I outlined that all in that episode if you want to go kind of check that out. But these 3 steps is exactly what our program, the Better Belly Blueprint, teaches you and guides you and gives you every single tool you would possibly need to do this in the fastest way possible. But what we're going to do today, I'm going to teach you how to understand your ERMI results, understand which of the 3 major categories your results fall into. There are 3 major categories. And number 3, I'm going to teach you what actions to take next based on your results, which category your ERMI lands in. And so be sure to stick around to the end because that's when I'm going to tell you what to do about your results, not just how to interpret it, which you're going to learn that. All right, so now we're going to actually open up ERMIs. I'm going to turn on my ERMI examples here so you guys can see this. For those of you turning on video, if you have an ERMI, just pull yours up, especially if it's modern, like it's from Envirobiomics and it's in the last few years, it should follow a very similar format of what I'm describing. They do sometimes change the format, but it's been in this way for a while. And I'd say since I've been getting this lab, the only thing they've done is honestly just add more color coding and made it more visually easy to track. Otherwise, it's stayed pretty similar. So when you open up the test, the first page, you're actually going to be able to see your client name, who took the sample, the address that it was taken at, information that you gave the Envirobiomics when you filled out the form for it. It'll say, you have one area where you say, is this ERMI pre-remediation or post-remediation? If you are just exploring, do we have mold in our immediate living space? It's going to be pre-remediation. And then the date of sampling. Most of the ERMIs we're looking at today are my clients' ERMIs, all with their data blocked out, but some of them are actually mine, and I'll tell you which ones those are. On the next page, where you first start seeing some results, you're going to see group 1 water damage molds. These are the molds that I alerted earlier that mean they're molds that should really only pop up if there's been water damage. You want to see all of these green levels, meaning normal range, within a normal range levels. And then that's not your ERMI score yet, though. So it's just like a calculation. And then they add all of those numbers up with weighted information, and they give it a sum of all of your water damage molds. Then they take your common indoor molds. They weight it on, is it within normal range? Is it 10 times higher than normal, 100 times higher, or 1,000 times higher? That's how you get like a green bar is normal range, 10 times higher level is yellow, then orange is 100, red is 1,000 times higher than what it should be. You get a sum of that group of molds, and then they actually subtract it. So you have your water damage mold score, then they subtract your common indoor molds. That's supposed to be the weighting of how they sort of manage, and I'm going to tell you about the pros and cons of this, but how they manage the idea that mold is everywhere, right? So they don't want to add points to your home for just having normal indoor molds. That's why the subtraction's happening. And then when you get the subtraction results, that's your ERMI score. ERMI stands for Environmental Relative Moldiness Index. I think the first time I heard that, I thought it was a total unnecessary amount of mouthful, basically. And I like to call it the total mold load. It's not specific. It's just basically saying, here's the weight of what we have going on. There's ways that these numbers get off, and it's one of the reasons people can misinterpret it. I'm going to teach you how to avoid that, and it's pretty easy, guys. So you really can do this in 5 minutes once you understand the concepts. I know it's a more than 5-minute episode, but when you know the concepts, you'll be able to look at this and under 5 minutes, understand what you're looking at. So that's your first page. That's your ERMI. Now, most ERMIs, when you buy it from Envirobiomics, also have a second section called the HERTSMI. They don't really put a great header on it, but you're going to scroll past your ERMI results, and it gives you some results Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. We're going to look at that in a second when I talk about analyzing it. But the next big section you want to be aware of on this is the HERTSMI, HERTSMI-2. These are your top 5 most toxic molds. And there's many approaches to what to expect on this, but the HERTSMI itself wants it to be 10 or below. Some people believe that it should be 0, meaning none of these 5 molds were found anywhere. And to be fair, when they find, these are mold spores that we've picked up through dust. If they found one mold spore of Stachybotrys, which is classic black mold. If they find one mold spore of that on your ceiling fan, it had to fly up there and land and just hang out from a colony somewhere else in the house. And we don't know how far it had to travel. We don't know anything. So usually these spores or these spore fragments are indicative of a much larger colony. So the more spores you see, it's, one thing on this one I'm looking at right now, Stachybotrys is 6 spores. That's, good it's not saying it's only 6 in the entire house. No, that's just a fragment of whatever blew off the colony. For this one I'm looking at here, an Aspergillus versicolor, is 456 spores. And they help show you weighting of like what you really want to have for a healthy environment, or like more quote unquote normal levels of these things. And then they weight it. That weighting, they actually show you the weighting, so you can see that for some spores, even if there's just significantly fewer, just because of how toxic they are, they give it a higher weight. So it's very interesting. So that's the two things you're going to find on an ERMI. If you see the letters ND, N.D. it means not detected. It just meant that that sample didn't have it. It doesn't guarantee that it's not in your home, but just meant of what you gathered, it wasn't there. And so what you gather in your sample does matter. I do recommend following the instructions in the ERMI, and that can help a lot in making sure you have a good sample. All right, so number 2, we're going to read your ERMI and break it up into 2 parts, the ERMI score and the HERTSMI score. I want you to ask yourself 3 questions that's going to help you rank it, what your score is, or like what category we're going to put your ERMI in. So the first thing you're going to look for is you're going to go back up to your ERMI where they had the group 1 water damage molds, the group 2 common indoor molds, and then the ERMI results. And I want you to look at the number that you have. Here for this lab we're looking at, it says 22.6. That's the total score. Now, just to orient you to this, you can actually, we're going to scroll down to the next page and it gives you level. There says Q1 to Q2, Q3, Q4. This is homes in the US. If you're Q1, that means you have a less than -4. So something to know that some people aren't familiar with an ERMI is that a negative score is actually the best you can get, not 0. So if your score is 3, it's not the best it could possibly be. We'll talk about in a second, and in a future episode where I'm recording that's going to come out in a few weeks on how clean is clean enough, how good of an ERMI, because there's a lot of controversy on that. And I'm going to share what I've seen in my practice versus some of the recommendations out in the internet. But they actually give you a scale here. And I want you to ask yourself a very simple question. Is my ERMI score above 20? Is it 20 or above? Or like I've seen 19.6 and stuff. Like, is it super close to 20 or above? Your ERMI now is in a bad category. This is very bad. And the reason I say this is, it's backed up by the ERMI data itself, because Q4 actually split up into 2 parts. It's a 5 to 20 is bad, but then 20 plus is very, very high. Both of them are high, but 20 plus is very high. What I've actually seen in my practice, and I wasn't looking for this pattern, but I noticed it over time, is that any client of mine who was getting a 20 or higher, or close to 20 or higher on their ERMI had very little to no response to any protocols we tried. If anything, they felt worse. It was like hands down automatic every time. It didn't matter. And it didn't matter if it was antihistaminic. It didn't matter what we did. It seemed that almost nothing worked. And even if they like changed their diet and were super food restrictive, they were miserable. And so there's something that I've been seeing with 20 plus where I say it really changes the advice, which we're going to get to in a sec. It really changes the advice on what to do next. So that's one way you can get your ERMI, would be a bad score. Like in the category, you're going to basically have bad, a mix, or good. Three very simple categories: a bad ERMI, a mixed score, or very good, or what I call good enough. So if your ERMI is above 20, that's done. You're done. It's a very simple analysis. The second thing you're going to consider, if your ERMI is below 20, but it's between 5 to 20, the second thing, before you determine if it's bad or not, I want you to look at the second thing. When you go back up to the water damage molds and the common indoor molds, how many molds are orange and red? If you have any red, I consider that also a very bad result, which we're going to talk about how a bad ERMI, why it gets different advice on what to do next than the mixed bag, meaning like not great. You have to do something, but it's different, right? If you have any markers that are red, it's bad. Because one of the things that happens, that's the downsides of this whole subtraction thing, where you're taking water damage molds and you're subtracting common indoor molds, is that you could have a ton, like 100x, 1000x the normal levels of common indoor molds, and it will lower your ERMI score. And so one thing you want to consider, and that can happen, is people say, well, I only have an ERMI score of 12 or 8. I think there's one in this list here I'm going to show you that's 8. I could be wrong. But it's only that low because the number of common indoor molds they have is extremely high. And so it's lowering the ERMI score because that's the number that's getting subtracted. But what we need to consider and what you need to look out for is if you have a lot of individual mold markers that are red, even one red is bad enough, but multiple red, or like I'd say 3 or more that are orange. This one has 3 that are orange, and it is an ERMI score of 22.6. So it's definitely in the bad category. All right, so that's the first section you're going to look at. And then the next section you're going to look at is the HERTSMI one, which is the top 5 most toxic molds. This one, you're just generally looking at how many, you want as many of these as possible to be ND, not detected. The one I'm looking at here, all 5 categories of molds are detected. And one of them is 10x higher than it should be. They all have significant weightings. There's a 10, a 6, a 4, a 4, and a 4. And they add to a total HERTSMI of 28. You can see the HERTSMI interpretation is if it's greater than 15, reoccupancy is ill-advised until further remediation. If it's between 11 to 15, it's borderline. You want to further remediation and reassessment if indicated. And then 10 or below, it says that reoccupancy is very likely, but it's very vague. For some people, they'll need to remediate. For some people, they won't. It depends on other parts of the ERMI and details that I'd say but it's more fine-tuned. It's more likely you won't have to do heavy remediation, but you might have to do things like fine particle cleaning or cleaning your clothes, or it kind of depends on what's been going on in the house and why it has this result. But for an initial analysis, to get it in the good or bad category, you're mainly going to need that ERMI score. Is it 20 plus, or is there like red or orange level, multiple orange individual markers in the ERMI area? And just the HERTSMI is generally going to get you another sense of how bad things are. Let me show you another ERMI here. So this is one where the ERMI score was 17.9, so it's below 20. There's a lot of molds right here, though, that are yellow. So it's just like moderate. So this is a really good example of what I call a mixed result, meaning it's not over 20, like, oh my gosh, this is super bad. It's also not good, though. It's not like you shouldn't do anything. And so this is the one where I'd say people like to say, well, most of these molds here are green. You can look at it. There's only one that's orange. It's in the common indoor molds. A lot of them are green. And then I'd say maybe half, I haven't counted here, half or 3/5 of these mold markers are yellow. So nothing like looks super bad. And then the total ERMI results, of course, is 17.9, which is not good. It's in that upper range of the 5 to 20, which is like the worst scores. Like most of the time you're going to have to get out of there for one of those scores. But people can just easily say it's just our nature to not want to have to deal with mold. And if you don't have really good inspectors and people analyzing this ERMI test, you're going to get overly confident that this is not an issue for you. But if we get one thing that's really interesting is that this HERTSMI for this client was 26. So for the first test that we saw, by contrast, it was 28 was the HERTSMI, and it had a ERMI of 22. This is only 2 points lower in the 5 most toxic molds, but the ERMI looks a lot like more chill. And so it's just a reminder that the HERTSMI, I like to use the HERTSMI as sometimes a more obvious way to say this is not okay. You want the HERTSMI to be 10 or below. It's at 26. That's not good. So that's a good example of like a mixed result. This next one that we're looking at here has a lot, like actually the most number of red individual markers I've seen, meaning they're 1,000 times the levels they should be and it's in both the categories of water damage molds and common indoor molds. Like these molds are just growing everywhere. So this is going to throw off the ERMI score because you have a high amount of water damage, but you also have a high amount of common indoor. And so they end up subtracting out from each other. And that's why the individual marker analysis, which doesn't even necessarily need to look at specific ones, but you're generally looking at, of the individual markers together, do they tell a story of mold overgrowth? That really only happens when it's being enabled and fed, and you need water as the source of being food. Like all houses, or at least modern houses, they have wood, they have drywall, they have things that mold considers substrate to live on, but you need the water, whether it's humidity in the air or a leak or something, you need some source of water to be actually what enables the mold to grow. So there is a great mold growth opportunity going on for this one, even though the ERMI is only 16. Again, not a good number, but easier for someone to blow off. The HERTSMI for this one is 22. Still not great. The HERTSMI is going to usually tell a similar story. Sometimes, though, it'll be very grounding to an ERMI that looks too good, and then the HERTSMI looks horrible, which just highlights, hey, of your 5 most toxic molds, this is what you're actually growing, even if like you're not overgrowing all your basic molds. This next one I like to call misleading. So we look in the first section. You see mostly, which is the water damage molds, you see mostly green with a little yellow, and just one of these is red, like super hot red. And in the common indoor molds, I'd say half of them have yellows, meaning 10 times overgrown. 2 of them have orange. And the total ERMI is 12.5, still above even just a 10 threshold, let alone that 5 to 20 is quadrant 4. It's the worst it could be. 20 plus is like the worst. We get down to the HERTSMI, and it's an 18, still above even 15. These are all what I would consider, or this misleading one, this is a mixed. So mixed means you're not above 20 with an ERMI. None of your individual molds are red. And if you have orange, it's just like 1 or 2. And then it's mostly yellows or greens in the quantity of molds found. We're going to talk about mixed in a second. Here's another mixed, where I'd say it's like a little good, a little bad. Like it's in it. You'll understand why what you're going to do, the action steps you're going to take look so different for a mixed versus an actual, like just very bad ERMI. You can see a lot of green here for the individual markers and water damage molds. The highest it gets is yellow, which is 10 times overgrowth. In the common indoor molds, also a lot of green, just a handful of yellows, no oranges or reds. And the total ERMI is 11.7. So that's one of the lowest we've seen. Still in Q4, one of the worst molds, we see the HERTSMI is a 20. So this is mixed. It's still not good. Still need to do something. Hopefully, as you're like either watching me do this, or you're looking at your own ERMI, or you're hearing me talk about molds and numbers, and hopefully it's not chaos with me just shouting out numbers at you. But hopefully you're getting a feel for what is like beyond the threshold. So before I keep showing you some more ERMIs, let's talk about interpretation and why these 20 plus on the ERMI or one red individual mold marker or a bunch of orange markers, like 3 plus, really, why I consider it bad and what it means. What it means is that you cannot get better. There's very little improvement while you're still living in that home, or it's unremediated. And this is good and bad. It's good because now you have expectations set that if you buy supplements and you change your diet and you buy expensive supplements, why you might not get results. It could just be the environment you're living in. The first and most important thing is to get out of the environment or to do some massive changes to the environment so that it is livable and sustainable. We're not going to cover the breadth of all of that in this episode, but I cannot stress it enough. And I might be giving you very bad news right now. I don't know what your ERMI is looking like. But what I found over time is when I'm trying to get a client results, setting expectations is the most important thing. So if I fail to tell a client that they are not going to get results or very noticeable results, if they stay in their home, they will think that all the protocols I put them through was what failed, or that they wasted their time or they wasted their money. And they'd probably be right on the time and money. And it would be my fault if I didn't tell them that they need to improve their environment to make progress. So that's what I mean by bad. That is a bad. Bad means mold is first. Environment improvement is the number one priority. And the good news is it can save you a lot of money. You can just start feeling better. I had a client who, she signed up to work with me, filled out all the intake forms, went on vacation as she was waiting for our first call. Like in the meantime, comes back on the first call. She tells me her symptoms dramatically improved. There was brain fog, there was skin issues, itching, fatigue, bloating, abdominal pain, massive, just like seemed like everything was going wrong. She goes on vacation to an Airbnb, totally better. Not Everything, but like so much more livable. Immediately is like, oh, it's my air quality. Starts couch surfing as she's waiting for our first call. It was like one or two of her friends' homes. Felt worse at one of her homes she was staying at. So then she went to another home and was really learning to listen to her body and be like, oh, I feel a lot worse. Now, that's not going to happen to everyone. There's a variety of reasons why sometimes getting into a low mold environment doesn't create immediate dramatic improvement, but for a lot of our clients it does. And so that's the good news. You don't even have to buy a supplement. Now, you might have to work out like who are you going to live with and how's that going to work? And there's other pains associated with it, but it's definitely not a supplement order or a new lab. Things that people are, or like 20 pills you have to shove down your throat, or even a diet change. Guys, it's just different and it can work super well. And that is a relief to many of our clients once they are in that better circumstance for living, even if it's temporary, just until the home is remediated or they buy a new place or whatever. So this differs dramatically from that good-bad mix, or the mixed results that I like to say. That you have a mixed result if your ERMI score, when they subtract the water damage molds from the common indoor molds, that ERMI score, it was between 5 to 20, not above 20, just 5 to 20. Or you have 3+ individual molds that are in the yellow-orange range. That's that mixed results, kind of like, hey, you have to do something about mold if you want full results. But I see clients be able to start protocols. It could be for H. pylori, or to absorb minerals like sodium and potassium, or start killing off candida, or start rebuilding their stomach acid, or start dealing with copper toxicity. Whatever the first relevant protocols are, they can start them and actually start getting results. So those clients are happy because they feel like there's a little bit more margin between them and immediately fixing their housing situation. But it is basically what I see is if they don't fix their environmental exposure, as soon as they go off their protocols, their symptoms flood back. Also, what we often see is a plateau. So symptoms improve maybe 50%. That's 50. But then they don't improve much past 50%, and they work really hard and they're still having maybe histamine issues, or they're still having bloating even though their constipation's resolved, whatever it is. Mold exposure is not the only thing that can cause those symptoms and have lingering, why there's a plateaued improvement, but it is a common one, especially if we have a confirmed ERMI where it's like, it's not bad, it wasn't the 20+, but it's not good. You have to do something about the environment to get the total improvement. And that's actually where I was when I got my tinnitus, my dizziness, sinus pain and pressure, daily headaches, constant muscle and neck pain. When I suddenly started having that, I was living in an ERMI. Well, I'll show you the ERMI. I was living in a home that was a family member's home, so not mine, where the ERMI was mixed. It was not that dramatic. And it makes sense. I was functional, but I was pretty miserable. I mean, tinnitus on its own is miserable, y'all. And if you want to hear more about my tinnitus story, I actually share about it in the podcast. Let me go pull up just the episode number, since I don't have it memorized off the top of my head. It is in our list of it's episode 225. It's in the list of mold episodes. If you go to betterbellytherapies.com/mold, all of those episodes, it's in there. And by the way, you don't even have to share your email for that document. Just like go and grab it. But I share more about my tinnitus journey and how I reversed my tinnitus and how I knew it was mold and other things that can actually cause tinnitus. So not saying mold always causes it, but understand. So that's the very, very important difference between bad and mixed. They're both ultimately say you ultimately need to remediate or get into a low mold environment, whether you move or whatever, or like cancel your rental agreement, whatever it is. But one is like, it has to go first to likely see results. The other one is you could probably start healing and seeing some improvements. But to ultimately get like the long-term deep results you're looking for, it must happen. Okay, so this is actually my ERMI. That was the worst. For all of you who are super curious, we have so many clients who've been like, what did your ERMI look like when you were sick? Not that crazy. It's a little depressing. I even wonder, one test we didn't do that I wondered about for that house is maybe an endotoxin test. I wonder if endotoxins might be something it has going on. I'm not going to get into endotoxins on this episode, but it is another form of biotoxins, and it's not mold, it's bacteria. But a good example, for example, is a like sewer gas leak are common sources of endotoxins. But there are other sources like bat guano or rat poop or things like that. So, all right. This was when my symptoms were the worst, which is why I pulled it up. You can see the water damage molds, the common indoor molds. The highest level here is the common indoor mold. And so this common indoor mold being orange is going to cause a subtraction from the total score of the water damage molds. You have to keep that in mind. So the total ERMI results for that home is 9.5. It's under 10. It's still in that 5 to 20 range, so meaning something should be done ultimately long term. And what was done is we moved out and we got an apartment that we'd tested with an ERMI that was safe for us to live in. The HERTSMI score was 14, so it was right under that 15. So it was between 11 to 15, meaning it does need remediation, but it's probably not like get out right now. And that probably makes sense. Like it correlates with the symptoms I was seeing. I wasn't having respiratory issues. I wasn't completely unable to do anything or get out of bed. I wasn't having autoimmune conditions pop up out of nowhere. Like we will often see our clients, have, it's almost like dangerous symptoms, just like like extreme anger, not always, or like extreme pain. Could be pain anywhere in the body, gut, head, just body. And then this is the test we did on the apartment we ended up living in when we were looking for a safe place to move into. You can see water damage molds, already just generally lower, and then common indoor molds, nothing orange. And its ERMI result was 4.8. So some people are going to lose their mind because if you've been in the ERMI conversations for a while, some people say you must have a negative number to like live in a healthy location. And this is before we did fine particle cleaning. We did fine particle cleaning before we moved in, which is like things like wiping down the walls and all the cabinetry. That it could just maybe that number 4.8 was coming from the previous owner. They had pets. It could have been from any of their items or objects that had been in the house that have been moved out. So, the apartment complex, of course, had a cleaner go through and clean everything. And we actually asked to do this before the cleaner went through because they would potentially pick up all the dust we wanted. And then so their cleaner went through and then we did fine particle cleaning and we never had any issues there. We also looked for the 5 signs of hidden mold, which we have a whole podcast on, thanks to Brian Carr from We Inspect, who he talks about like visible signs of mold, even when you don't see the actual mold spots themselves. It's a great episode. It's on our list of mold episodes. Just go to betterbellytherapies.com/mold to grab it. So this was where I was not sick. ERMI of 4.8, a HERTSMI of 8, so not 0. It was below 10. So like you can kind of see 0 or negative numbers were not required for us to feel better. My daughter was getting nosebleeds. Her nosebleeds stopped. My daughter was throwing up once a week at daycare. She stopped throwing up once a week at daycare. My tinnitus receded. And yeah, it just really shows your environment. Like it didn't have to I was taking supplements to get it out of my body, which is a part of our process in the Better Belly Blueprint, is actually then making sure we remove any colonization in the body. And there is colonization in the body when you've been sick like that. But that's it. That's how you know. This is what I call a good ERMI, or what I call good enough, because there's a lot of drama online on like you have to have negative numbers. And I like to say, is it good enough? There's possible that there's people who are sensitive enough to mold that this place where my tinnitus healed and my daughter's nosebleeds stopped, it's possible that they would still be sick in this environment. And so, but what is probably going to be true is that they would feel better, even if it's not perfect, they would feel better in a 4.8 than if they had been in a 15 or a 22. So a big tenet that I've been finding is really true, and I want to use it, and I've been saying it like, because it's true and also reduces a ton of pressure, which is progress over perfection. My friend Matt Kelly, he's a mold expert, and some of y'all follow him since I've recommended him before on the podcast. When he was remediating mold from his home, if I remember the story correctly, he shared the story on our podcast, which is also in the mold links document, which is toxic mold success story, how he healed his family with Matt Kelly. So go listen to it for the real details. But what I remember is the first thing he did was figured out that there was water damage around some, if not all, of his windows. And so he replaced all the windows in his home. And his son, who was his primary symptomatic child, though all of them were having symptoms, already started feeling better. But it wasn't perfect. And then just happenstance, when they had a rainstorm, he realized that he could see on his infrared light gun that there was like a streak of dark water coming through like a corner of the house. And I think it was like a roof issue. So then they fixed the roof, and there was progress. He was able to progressively improve symptoms. So just to encourage y'all, it doesn't have to be perfect. There are ways to improve. So here's some specific action steps I recommend for each category. If you're in the bad category, getting out is priority. Everything else waits. And getting out or just remediating as hella fast as you can. So you want to get a qualified inspector in as soon as possible. I give you guidance on how to do that in the 3-step mold treatment plan. We also do it in our program and help you find qualified providers in your area. I recommend getting high-tech air filters, or at least an air reactor that is PCO technology, photocatalytic oxidation. These are very different. They are not air filters. They actually create a molecule kind of called for some reason I was doubting myself for a second. Hydroxylase. Guys, I'm doubting myself. This is annoying. The sun does it. I'm just going to look at photocatalytic oxidation. Sun does it in the atmosphere. NASA figured out how to do it. Guys, ways to get distracted. Yeah, it creates a hydroxyl. I was super close. Hydroxylase. I was making up a word. Adds a hydroxyl. So it sends out hydroxyls, which actually breaks down toxins. It literally doesn't trap it like a filter. It breaks it down. Viruses, bacteria, mold spores, mycotoxins. It can break it down. Really, really powerful. High-tech's one we've used for a long time, but also we've been seeing clients get good results with PuraCleanse. Just go to betterbillytherapies.com/cleanse, like a candida cleanse, and use the code BBT. I'll put the links in the show notes, and you can get 25% off of your order. And you just need like the little unit. It doesn't have a HEPA filter, but it creates photocatalytic oxidation. You can start off just with your room. If you can buy a couple, it'd be like your room and the next most common place you live, or if you have children, put it in their room, put it in a living room. And it's super powerful. Open your windows daily. It's a free thing. Do it for 20 minutes minimum, ideally when it's coolest and least humid. I know that can be hard for some of y'all, middle of summer, depending on the time of year. But definitely even in the winter, it's nice dry air. And I know it'll make your house cold momentarily, but it literally cleans out all the air with the fresh stuff that the sun's been making outside. If you rent, you can move. There are literally ways that you can break lease based off of it being dangerous. And if they won't act to make it a healthy, safe place for you to live, you can break your contract and they should not be able to charge you anything. Now, they won't like it. They might fight it. If you need any help or it's worth it, you could go talk to Christina Bear at Just Well Law. She came and spoke on our podcast. That's our episode's also on the mold sheet, called How to Have a Strong Legal Case Against Toxic Mold. She represents people in toxic mold cases. Really strongly recommend her. So, but if you rent, you can just move. Simple as that. There are things involved with the more porous the items that are large, and you like, so like a shirt is porous, but you can throw it into the washing machine with vinegar and it can clean out mold or hydrogen peroxide. But mattresses, not so much. The more big and porous something is, like a couch, a mattress, the more you're going to want to ditch it and get something new. But anything you can clean, like clothes, anything that's not porous, like glass, and you can just wipe down, you can clean. Just soap and water is good enough because it doesn't get into it. Things that are like semi-porous, wood, like wood, furniture, things like that. Then the more strict versions of people who do cleaning say get rid of it completely. If you are more sensitive to mold, if you know you're sensitive to mold, you've observed it, that's been your experience, you're going to want to get rid of semi-permanent stuff. Or semi-porous items, which is like, in your mind, you might not think it's porous, but like wood is porous. Fully porous would be like a stuffed animal, a couch, a mattress. Semi-porous is like wood. I'm trying to think of another good example. Wood's a really common one. Not porous is like glass, metal, things like that. If you own your house, I've had clients Airbnb another place to live. I've had them couch surf on friends and family's homes. Whatever helps you get out fast so that you can then remediate while not being in the environment. That's going to be the best thing that I've seen. I would say if you have some supplements that help you, that you notice you feel better on, you can stay on them. But generally, if you are in the bad category, I see very minimal supplements, very few supplements making a difference because the body's just so toxic. What I do see is actually really helpful is something we call the gentle nasal treatment. It is literally nasal sprays, and it can really help your air quality in your sinuses and help start managing infections that are in the sinuses from breathing in that air. That's in our program, the Better Belly Blueprint. We also sometimes see nutrient and mineral repletion, like adding a lot of minerals you are low in back into your diet is helpful. And we help in our program guide you on figuring out which minerals you're deficient in and then how to get them back into your life. These are just really gentle things, and it's not like a ton of stuff. And then for this bad category, be honest with yourself about the timeline of like how important it is. Saying like, I'll get to it, or I'm not sure, it does delay healing. And I ultimately tell clients like, you are the only one in control of your healing. Your doctor doesn't have more ownership over your healing than you do. I don't, some random podcaster, right? So yeah, this is not a shame thing. Like if you're just like, I'm not going to do anything about it, and I accept that this is how I'm going to feel, great. At least you know. The worst thing though is when clients have said, I've been in denial and it took a year off of it delayed my healing by a year because I wanted to try everything else. They'll do this in our program. I want to try everything else in the program before I addressed having to face moving. And then once they move, they feel so much better. So that's for the bad category. For the good, bad mix, I just encourage clients, start where you can start. If you're already have inertia and momentum to fix your house, you can start with that. But a lot of our clients find that it's easier to start with, for example, the stuff we work with and talk about diet change that's relevant to them based on their testing, or talk about, again, replenishing minerals, starting to work on copper toxicity protocol if that's relevant, or hidden infections like H. pylori, C. diff, whatever's relevant to them based on their testing, because everybody's got a different combination of stuff. And so they kind of can work on the protocols at the same time as starting to have an inspector come in and find what's going on in the house, get PCO technology, the either high-tech air reactors or PuraCleanse. Those are still really relevant techniques. Gentle nasal treatment, super powerful for this. There's just a little bit more of that gap where you don't have to immediately move into somebody else's home or some other situation. You could take, like, if your rental agreement's going to end in 2 months anyways, just be like, okay, I'm leaving. I'm not going to pick up this rental agreement again. I'm going to move somewhere else. And then there's good enough. So that's where my example was the one where the apartment we were living in, that was like a 4.8 and we were feeling good in. So if you get an ERMI, maybe it's your first ERMI, or maybe it's your ERMI that you just got after remediating your home, sometimes people can feel very discouraged because that they've had someone say, well, it's not a 0 or it's not a negative number ERMI, so it's not safe. That's not necessarily true. And what we've been seeing more with our clients is that if you're still symptomatic in a home that is like a ERMI, like a 0 or like really low number, 0, 1, 2, 3, or a negative number, it's usually not mold. It could be endotoxins. It could be unaddressed gut issues. It could be unaddressed heavy metals or copper toxicity. So it's basically other issues with your body. That's not mold, or it could be other biotoxin exposures, parabens, phthalates, endotoxins, actinos. So not to like cause paranoia, I think molds, if you have a positive ERMI, work on that first. You can't do all of it at once. Even if you knew everything, you can't work on it all at once. So work on what you can. And if you're in that good enough category, I would just stress a little less about mold and be a little bit more creative about other things. Now, there is my big thing caveat here is I'm not saying there's not mold. Sometimes ERMIs come back unnaturally low for one reason or another. And this happened to a client of mine recently. She didn't redo an ERMI so I can't say that it was an ERMI's fault, but she believed that their remediation had fixed a lot of stuff, and we'd been working together for about 6 months, maybe 8, 9 months actually, with her son, and they recently just found some water damage happening in the master bathroom, which is right above their son's bedroom, and it's coming from their roof. And so that was really discouraging for her but it was also actually like, I mean, she's not like looking forward to the process of getting it fixed, but she's also looking forward to the improvements because they've gotten so much improvement with their son as they've eliminated exposure sources that to her is like, okay, now I have something to dig into. There's not this like general like witch hunt of what thing is causing an issue. It's like we have it. So if it is mold, usually I find that it eventually self-reveals. It eventually gets bad enough, gets clear enough, something happens where you're like, oh, it's mold. But if you have an ERMI and you're still not feeling well, and it's this low number ERMI, 5 and under, it might not be mold, even if someone's being kind of saying, well, it's not negative, so it's probably mold. It might not be. So there's other caveats. There really are. So that's where working with knowledgeable, experienced professionals helps because they can see your exact numbers and really know what you've done to remediate and what you haven't done and what you've tested for, and even just listen to your symptom mapping of like, what are all the symptoms you're dealing with? And you can give a lot stronger idea of what might be going on. Maybe it's like jaw cavitations, which is where you have an infection in the bone of your jaw from like root canals or getting your wisdom teeth pulled. So really just like giving yourself grace and also like letting yourself say, okay, my ERMI is low, but I still don't feel well. It might not be mold, and there can be some like pressure off there. So, all right. Some just top high level advice from here. Open the windows 20 minutes a day is great for everybody. We do it in our low mold home that we're living in right now. Leave the AC running when you travel so that humidity and heat is controlled. Get a dehumidifier. If you have a, what's it called? A sump pump, you can just have your dehumidifier dump straight into the sump pump, which is awesome. You can get cheap humidity monitors or like water. What do they call it? Water. It's not water. It's something else. But monitors that it'll literally beep at you. Some are Wi-Fi enabled. I know, you might have mixed feeling on EMF, but some are Wi-Fi enabled. You can put them under your kitchen sink, under your fridge water line, under by your, what is it called? The hot water heater in your basement. And if there's dripping, then it would like either beep loudly or send a notification to your phone if it's Wi-Fi enabled. So that is it. I hope that helps you guys. I hope it encourages you. I hope it gives you clarity. ERMIs can be understood in 5 minutes or less. What takes longer is knowing the next steps and then taking action on the appropriate next steps, depending on if you have a good ERMI, a mixed ERMI, or a good enough ERMI, a mixed ERMI, or a bad ERMI. That's it. I hope that helps, guys. If this was helpful, send it to a friend, share it in your groups, because I literally have not been able to find any ERMI analysis like this. And I know this was almost an hour-long episode, so not 5 minutes to learn how to do it, but it is just a quick glance to Be like, oh, what's going on? And this has been really good guidelines for our clients. There are ways to go deeper into ERMIs to like analyze every single mold. Is it a mold that likes dry air? Is a mold that likes continuous water sources? There's ways to like kind of go crazy on it to try and correlate your mold on your ERMI with your mold found in your body test, which I honestly think is a lost cause, but I know some people like to try to do that. This is just going to help give you the next step of like what do you need to do next to reasonably get results so you actually feel like you're making progress in your healing journey, because that's what we all want, right? So that's it. I will see you guys in the next episode. Oh, guys. That was silly. That was a long pause. I forgot. To be very clear, if you want to work with us to like heal your body, to get our exact process, to get all access to our testing at wholesale cost, to get access to all our videos on how to analyze, just like this video, how to analyze lab testing, you would need to understand your body so that you know what to heal in your body, because things are chaotic. If you've been exposed to mold, things are not well on the inside either. They need to be rebuilt. If you want to have support and guidance and advice and more resources on how to address and tackle mold in your living environments, in your workplace, at the gym, come join our program, the Better Belly Blueprint. It helps guide you how to heal your body and your gut from mold and anything else that's been exposed to in the right order so that you get healed as quick as possible, as cheap as possible. Just go to betterbellytherapies.com/blueprint and love to see you inside.
Hey friend, I hope you loved this episode. If you've been a fan for a while or newly loving this podcast, can you do me a favor? Drop into Apple Podcasts and leave me a review. When you leave a review, you do so much. You help me know you're listening. You can tell me what you're loving so I know what to make more of. And you help others by boosting this podcast so other people like you can find the podcast too. I mean, it's a win-win-win, right? So if you want a way to pay it forward, just go to Apple Podcasts or click the link in my show notes and leave a rating and review. And if you want some more free stuff, just head over to my free Facebook group, betterbellytherapies.com/Facebook, and you can get access to all of my free support for you, including some Facebook group exclusive stuff like my podcast episode vault, where you can search the Better Belly podcast by topic and find exactly what you need to expedite your healing. I cannot wait to see you in there. Catch you guys next week.